The sleek human ship hung in the void, dwarfed by the colossal Lurian warships that surrounded it. In the dim light of the distant star, the scene was a stark contrast of technological might and humble exploration. The Lurians had summoned the Earth vessel here, to the heart of their empire, to make a statement. And now, as the human crew watched in tense silence, that statement was about to be delivered. "Captain Foster, let me make one thing clear," Admiral Thule said, his holographic form towering over the Odyssey's bridge. "You are nothing. Your ship is a toy. Your species is a footnote in the annals of the cosmos. And yet, you have the audacity to trespass in our space?" Foster stood firm, meeting the Admiral's gaze. "We come in peace, Admiral. Our mission is one of exploration and—" "Spare me your platitudes," Thule spat. "We have observed your planet. We have seen the pettiness and violence that define your kind. You are not ready for the stars, and you are certainly not worthy of our time." As the Admiral spoke, Foster shared a knowing glance with his first officer, Commander Novak. A subtle nod passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of what was to come. "Admiral Thule," Foster said, a hint of defiance in his voice, "I think you'll find that you have vastly underestimated us." The captain turned to his chief engineer, Dr. Singh, and gave a simple nod. Singh's fingers flew across her console, inputting a complex series of commands. The bridge hummed with power as the Odyssey's experimental teleportation drive came to life. In a blinding flash, the human ship vanished from its position, only to reappear an instant later in the midst of the Lurian fleet. Alarm klaxons blared on the alien vessels as their crews scrambled to respond to the sudden intrusion. On the Odyssey's bridge, a grim smile played across Foster's lips. "All hands, prepare to engage the enemy," Commander Novak announced over the ship-wide comm. "We're fighting for the future of Earth." As he spoke, Dr. Singh worked furiously at her station, locking onto the critical systems of the largest Lurian ships. With a final keystroke, she activated the Odyssey's most potent weapon, a swarm of high-yield explosives, teleported directly into the hearts of the enemy vessels. The first detonations lit up the void like newborn stars, the shockwaves buffeting the Odyssey as it pressed its attack. The Lurians, caught completely off guard, struggled to mount a defense against the audacious human assault. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Lurian Empire found itself on the back foot, its arrogance and complacency turned against it by an upstart species it had dismissed as beneath notice. The fate of Earth, and perhaps the galaxy itself, would be decided in the fires of this unprecedented battle, a battle made possible by the indomitable spirit and ingenuity of humankind. The Odyssey darted through the chaos of the battle, explosions blossoming in its wake as teleported ordnance wreaked havoc on the Lurian fleet. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Ivanova's fingers danced across her console, directing the placement of each devastating charge with precision and purpose. "Target their weapon systems and engines," Captain Foster ordered, his voice steady despite the tremors that shook the ship. "We need to cripple as many of them as we can." Ivanova nodded, her eyes locked on the tactical display. One by one, the Lurian ships faltered, their offensive capabilities neutralized by the human crew's audacious assault. But the Lurians were far from defeated. Admiral Thule's voice boomed across the comm channels, rallying his forces to retaliate. "Focus all fire on that human vessel," he commanded. "Tear it apart!" A storm of energy weapons converged on the Odyssey, battering its shields with relentless force. The bridge shuddered under the onslaught, sparks flying from overloaded consoles. "Shields at 60% and falling," Lieutenant Nguyen reported from the ops station, his face illuminated by the glow of warning indicators. In engineering, Dr. Singh raced to keep the teleportation drive operational, sweat beading on her brow as she rerouted power from non-essential systems. "Captain, the device is straining under the power draw," she warned over the comm. "I don't know how much longer it can sustain this level of use." Foster gritted his teeth, his mind racing to formulate a plan. They had caught the Lurians off guard, but sheer numbers and firepower were starting to turn the tide. They needed a miracle. Suddenly, Singh's voice crackled over the comm again, this time permeated with urgency. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup on one of the Lurian ships. It looks like some kind of super weapon, far beyond anything we've seen before. Foster's blood ran cold. He had read the intelligence reports, the speculation about the Lurians' most closely guarded military secrets. If they had managed to create a weapon of that magnitude. "Evasive maneuvers," he barked. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew it was futile. The Odyssey was caught in the midst of the enemy fleet, with nowhere to run. On the monitor, the Lurian ship loomed, its prow glowing with an ominous light as the weapon prepared to fire. Foster braced himself for the end, a final defiant curse on his lips. And then, the unthinkable happened. The Lurian ship erupted in a series of blinding explosions, torn apart from within by some unseen force. The energy weapon detonated, its destructive power consumed by the vacuum of space. For a moment, the bridge of the Odyssey was silent, the crew staring in disbelief at the scattered remnants of their would-be destroyer. Then a new voice crackled over the comm, strong and clear. "Captain Foster, this is Captain Zara of the Lurian rebel forces. We've been waiting for an opportunity like this for years. Your actions have given us the chance we needed to strike against the tyranny of our own government. We're here to help." Foster exchanged a stunned glance with Commander Novak, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. An ally, here in the heart of enemy territory? It seemed too good to be true. But as more Lurian ships broke formation, turning their weapons on their former comrades, the truth became clear. The rebels had been hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. And the Odyssey's bold gambit had provided the spark to ignite the flames of revolution. "Captain Zara," Foster replied, a grin spreading across his face. "It seems we have a common enemy. We would be honored to fight alongside you." With rekindled persistence, the Odyssey and its unlikely allies plunged back into the fray, their combined might tearing through the Lurian fleet with minimal resistance. The battle was just getting started, but for the first time, victory seemed within reach. As the last of the loyal Lurian ships fell back in disarray, Foster allowed himself a moment of reflection. Just hours ago, he and his crew had been mocked, belittled, and underestimated by the very beings they now fought alongside. The irony was not lost on him. But there was no time to dwell on the past. The future of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The Odyssey and its crew had started this fight, and they would see it through to the end, regardless of the cost. The battle raged on, the fate of worlds decided in the cold, unforgiving depths of space. The exhilaration of their initial victory faded as quickly as it had come. Captain Foster watched the tactical display with growing unease as a massive new contact appeared at the edge of the system. "Sir, we're detecting an incoming vessel," Lieutenant Nguyen reported, his voice tight. It's unlike anything we've seen before." The bridge fell silent as the behemoth materialized on their screens. It dwarfed even the largest Lurian warships, its hull dripping with weapon emplacements and sleek predatory lines. "By the stars," Captain Zara breathed, her holographic form flickering with static. "That's High Admiral Crax's personal dreadnought. We never thought he'd bring it into battle himself." Foster's mind raced. They had barely held their own against the regular Lurian fleet. This new threat changed everything. "All ships, regroup and form a defensive perimeter," he ordered, his fingers drumming on the arm of his chair. "Dr. Singh, what's the status of our teleportation drive?" Before Singh could answer, a booming voice filled the comm channels. "Attention, rebel vermin and human interlopers. This is High Admiral Crax of the Lurian Empire. Your pathetic insurrection ends now." The dreadnought's weapons came to life, lancing out with pinpoint accuracy. 2 rebel ships vanished in balls of plasma before they could even raise their shields. "Evasive maneuvers," Foster barked. The Odyssey lurched as it narrowly avoided a barrage of energy torpedoes. For the next hour, chaos reigned. The human rebel alliance fought desperately against Crax's reinvigorated forces, but it was a losing battle. The dreadnought's firepower and impenetrable shields turned the tide, methodically picking apart their defenses. A violent impact rocked the Odyssey, sending crew members sprawling. Alarms blared as acrid smoke filled the bridge. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, Nguyen shouted over the din. "Shields critical." Foster gritted his teeth. "All ships, fall back to Rally Point Alpha. We need to regroup." As the battered fleet retreated to the system's outer reaches, Foster found himself dwelling on the sheer arrogance of their initial attack. They had thought themselves clever, using the element of surprise to gain the upper hand. Now, faced with the full might of the Lurian military, that confidence felt like ash in his mouth. In the relative calm of their temporary sanctuary, Captain Zara's hologram flickered to life on the Odyssey's bridge. Her face was grim, but determined. "Captain Foster, there's something you need to know about High Admiral Krax," she began. "He's not just another military leader. He's the embodiment of everything we're fighting against." Zara went on to explain the rigid caste system that formed the backbone of Lurian society, with Krax as its staunchest defender. She spoke of her own journey from loyal officer to rebel leader, driven by the injustices she had witnessed. As she finished her tale, Dr. Singh spoke up from her station. "Captain, I may have a solution to our dreadnought problem, but it's risky." Foster leaned forward, hope kindling in his chest. "Go on, Doctor." Singh outlined her plan to use the teleporter to infiltrate the dreadnought itself. As she spoke, a burly man stepped forward from the rear of the bridge. "Sir, if you're sending a team in there, I want to lead it," the man said, his voice gravelly and determined. Foster studied him for a moment. "And you are?" "Lieutenant Marcus Reeves, sir, Marine Corps Special Operations." As Reeves detailed his qualifications, Foster weighed their options. The plan was audacious, perhaps even foolhardy, but faced with the alternative of certain defeat, what choice did they have? "All right, Lieutenant," Foster said at last. "Assemble your team. You leave in 1 hour." As Reeves saluted and left to prepare, Foster turned back to the view screen. In the distance, the dreadnought loomed like a malevolent star, its weapons primed for the final push against the rebels. One way or another, the next few hours would decide the fate of two civilizations. As the Odyssey and its allies moved into position, Foster allowed himself a small, grim smile. Underestimating humanity had gotten the Lurians into this mess. With any luck, it would be their undoing. Lieutenant Marcus Reeves materialized in a dimly lit corridor of High Admiral Krax's dreadnought, his team solidifying around him. The acrid smell of ozone filled the air, a side effect of their unconventional entry. He raised a closed fist, signaling for silence as they oriented themselves. "Jayla, take point," Reeves whispered to the Lurian rebel at his side. Her 4 eyes scanned the hallway, alert for any signs of movement. They moved swiftly through the ship's labyrinthine passages, their footsteps muffled by the constant thrum of the massive vessel's engines. Reeves tapped his comm unit. "Dr. Singh, we're in. Guide us to the main power core." "Understood," Singh's voice crackled in his ear. "Take the next left, then 2 rights. Be careful, I'm detecting multiple life signs ahead." As they rounded the corner, a squad of Lurian security forces came into view. For a heartbeat, both groups froze in mutual surprise. Then chaos erupted. Reeves dove for cover as energy bolts sizzled past his head. "Take them out!" he shouted, returning fire with his pulse rifle. The corridor became a maelstrom of light and sound as human and Lurian weapons discharged. Jayla moved with fluid grace, her twin blasters finding their marks with deadly precision. One by one, the security forces fell. "Move!" Reeves ordered as soon as the last enemy dropped. They couldn't afford to linger. Every second increased the risk of detection. Following Singh's directions, they soon reached the engineering section. The cavernous space hummed with impossibly strong power, banks of equipment stretching as far as the eye could see. "There," Jayla pointed to a pulsing column of energy at the far end of the room. "That's the main power core." Reeves nodded, already unpacking the explosive charges from his pack. "Set up a perimeter. This won't take long." As his team fanned out, Reeves worked quickly to place the charges at key structural points Singh had identified. He was just attaching the final explosive when alarms began to blare throughout the ship. "We've been made!" one of his Marines shouted. "Incoming!" The engineering bay's massive doors slid open, disgorging a wave of Lurian troops. Reeves cursed, diving behind a console as energy bolts filled the air. "Suppressing fire," he ordered, popping up to loose a barrage from his rifle. "I need 30 seconds to arm these charges." His team responded instantly. laying down a blistering crossfire that pinned the Lurians at the entrance. Jayla moved like a whirlwind, her shots finding gaps in the enemy's armor with unerring accuracy. Reeves raced from charge to charge, inputting the activation codes with practiced speed. "Done!" he shouted as he armed the final explosive. "Fall back to the extraction point." They retreated under heavy fire, Reeves bringing up the rear. He felt a searing pain in his left arm as a bolt grazed him, but there was no time to stop. They had to put as much distance between themselves and the power core as possible. "Now, Doc!" Reeves yelled into his comm as they reached the predetermined coordinates. A familiar tingling sensation washed over him as the teleporter engaged. The last thing Reeves saw before dematerializing was a brilliant flash as the charges detonated, tearing the heart out of Krax's mighty dreadnought. Back on the Odyssey's bridge, Captain Foster watched with grim satisfaction as the dreadnought's weapons fell silent, its shields flickering and dying. "All ships, this is our chance," he broadcast to the fleet. "Commence assault on the enemy flagship. Teleport teams, prepare for immediate deployment." As the rebel ships surged forward, their weapons blazing, Foster allowed himself a moment of hope. The tide of battle had turned, but the war was far from won. High Admiral Krax was a cornered animal now, and those were always the most dangerous. The dreadnought's once immaculate bridge lay in ruins. Sparks showered from shattered consoles as High Admiral Krax surveyed the devastation, his proud posture faltering. Captain Foster materialized with a squad of Marines, their weapons trained on the Lurian commander. "It's over, Admiral," Foster said, his voice firm but not unkind. "Your fleet is in shambles. Surrender, and we can end this without further bloodshed." Krax's eyes narrowed, but after a long moment, he inclined his head. "You fight with honor, human. I yield." In the days that followed, the Odyssey became the epicenter of frantic diplomatic activity. Foster found himself shuttling between meetings with Captain Zara, Krax, and a parade of Lurian officials eager to pledge allegiance to the new order. "We need to strike while the iron is hot," Zara insisted during one late-night strategy session. "Every moment we delay gives Krax's loyalists time to regroup." Foster nodded, studying the holographic map of Lurian space. "Agreed. We'll start with the Xerxes outpost. It's a key strategic location, and taking it cleanly will send a message." As they spoke, Lieutenant Reeves entered the room, looking haggard but determined. "Sir, we've got a situation. Admiral Talix refusing to stand down. He's rallying forces for a counterattack." Foster's mind focused. So much for a smooth transition. "All right, let's deal with this quickly and decisively. Reeves, I want you to lead a strike team. Your target is Talix himself." "With pleasure, sir." Reeves grinned, the prospect of action energizing him. The plan came together swiftly. While Reeves and his team prepared for their assault on Talix's flagship, Foster coordinated with Dr. Singh to fine-tune the Odyssey's teleportation systems for a series of precision strikes. "Remember," Foster addressed the assembled strike teams, "our goal is to disable, not destroy. We want to bring these ships in intact if possible." The operation unfolded with clockwork precision. The Odyssey blinked in and out of real space, depositing strike teams onto Talix's support ships before vanishing again. On the flagship, Reeves and his Marines fought a running battle through corridors, awash in red emergency lighting. "Talix holed up in the Auxiliary Command Center," Jayla reported, her acute Lurian hearing picking up panicked chatter through the ship's internal communications. They breached the command center in a hail of gunfire and flashbangs. When the smoke cleared, Admiral Talix stood surrounded, his expression a mixture of fury and grudging respect. "You've won the day," Talix spat as Reeves secured his restraints. "But this isn't over. There will always be those who resist your so-called reforms." Back on the Odyssey, Foster watched as the last of Talix's ships went dark, their power cores safely neutralized. He allowed himself a small sigh of relief. The immediate threat was contained, but the real work was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, the Odyssey took on a new role. Foster found himself presiding over impromptu summits between human scientists and Lurian engineers, their initial wariness giving way to genuine excitement as they shared knowledge and ideas. It's remarkable, Dr. Singh mused as she worked alongside a Lurian counterpart to integrate their teleportation technology with Lurian power systems. Just a short time ago, we were mortal enemies. Now look at us. Even Krax, stripped of his rank but not his expertise, proved a valuable asset. His strategic mind, once bent on conquest, now focused on logistics and infrastructure as the Alliance worked to stabilize war-torn systems. Your species continues to surprise me, Captain, Krax admitted during one planning session. I underestimated your adaptability and your capacity for mercy. Foster nodded, accepting the compliment for what it was. We all have a lot to learn from each other, Admiral. That's the foundation we're building on. As the Odyssey prepared for its next mission, a diplomatic tour of the outer colonies, Foster couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. The ship that had once been humanity's last, desperate hope was now a symbol of a new era of cooperation. On the observation deck, he noticed a Latorn commander Ivanova deep in conversation with a Lurian scientist, their heads bent close together over a shared datapad. The sight brought a smile to his face. It was a small thing, but it represented something much larger, the first tentative steps toward true understanding between their peoples. Captain to the bridge, his comm unit chirped, interrupting his musings. We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Foster straightened his uniform and headed for the turbolift. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew the Odyssey and her crew were ready to face them. The journey of discovery had only just begun. Foster strode onto the bridge, his mind racing with possibilities. The priority transmission from Earth Command could mean anything from a routine status update to a game-changing development. He nodded to the communications officer. Put it through. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of Admiral Hawthorne. Captain Foster, I'll cut straight to the chase. We've received intelligence that a group of hardline Lurian elites are mobilizing against the New Order. They're led by an individual known as Archon Moloch. Foster's eyes narrowed. We expected some resistance, Admiral. What makes this group particularly concerning? Moloch has significant influence among the Old Guard. He's rallying support from remnants of the previous regime, preaching Lurian superiority and vowing to expel what he calls the human contamination. Our analysts believe he poses a credible threat to the stability we've worked so hard to achieve. Understood, sir. What are our orders? Hawthorne's expression hardened. Neutralize this threat, Captain, by any means necessary. As the transmission ended, Foster turned to his crew. Assemble the Joint Governance Council. We need to address this immediately. Hours later, Foster found himself in a heated debate with Captain Zara and other council members. The circular chamber buzzed with tension as voices rose and fell. We cannot allow Moloch to undo everything we've accomplished, Zara insisted, her four eyes blazing with intensity. Foster nodded, then outlined his proposal. We have a unique advantage, our transporter technology. I suggest we use it to selectively remove key leaders and ships from Moloch's faction. We can effectively imprison the dissenters without resorting to violence. A murmur rippled through the council. Tevik, a Lurian elder, spoke up. This plan skirts dangerously close to the very oppression we sought to overthrow, Captain. I understand your concerns, Foster replied, but we must act swiftly and decisively. The alternative is open conflict, which could tear apart everything we've built. The debate raged on, with ethical concerns weighed against pragmatic necessities. In the end, it was Zara who swayed the council. My people have suffered enough bloodshed, she said, her voice quiet but firm. If this plan can neutralize the threat without further violence, we must embrace it. With the council's approval secured, Foster wasted no time. He summoned Lieutenant Reeves to his ready room. I have a delicate mission for you and your team, Foster explained, outlining the plan to systematically infiltrate and transport Moloch's loyalists to a hastily constructed orbital facility. Reeves nodded, his expression grim. We'll get it done, sir. The operation began under cover of darkness. Reeves and his strike team moved with practiced efficiency, their targets vanishing in shimmering columns of light. As dawn broke over the Lurian capital, dozens of key dissidents found themselves contained within the sterile confines of the orbital prison. But Archon Moloch proved elusive. As word of the roundup spread, he went to ground, his location unknown. Foster paced the bridge of the Odyssey, waiting for news. Suddenly, alarms blared across the ship. "Multiple explosions reported throughout the fleet," the tactical officer shouted. Foster's blood ran cold. "On screen!" The view screen flickered to life, showing Alliance ships and stations rocked by internal detonations. Moloch had activated some kind of doomsday protocol, triggering hidden ordnance in a desperate bid to shatter the reforms. "Get me Dr. Singh," Foster barked. Singh's face appeared on a secondary screen, her expression taut with concentration. "I'm already on it, Captain, working with Lurian techs to shut down the failsafes." Tense minutes passed as Foster watched helplessly. Then gradually, the explosion subsided. Singh's voice crackled over the comm. "We've neutralized the threat, Captain, but it was close." Foster allowed himself a moment of relief before refocusing. "Well done, Doctor. But this isn't over. Moloch is still out there, and he's proven he's willing to go to any lengths." As if on cue, a priority message flashed across the main screen. Foster's eyes widened as he read the report. "Moloch seized control of an ancient Lurian factory station," he announced to the bridge crew. "Intelligence suggests it may house superweapons of incredible destructive power." A chill settled over the bridge. Foster turned to his first officer. "Set a course for that station. Maximum warp. We're in a race now, and the stakes couldn't be higher." As the Odyssey surged forward, Foster knew they were hurtling towards a confrontation that would determine the fate of two civilizations. Moloch had to be stopped, despite the toll. The Odyssey streaked through space, its engines straining as it raced towards the ancient Lurian factory station. On the bridge, Foster gripped the arms of his chair, his fist clenched. "ETA?" "3 minutes, Captain," the helmsman replied, voice tight with tension. Foster nodded, then opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, prepare for imminent engagement. Reeves, is your team ready?" "Locked and loaded, sir," came the crisp response. As they dropped out of warp, the factory station loomed before them, a massive, angular construct filled with weapons. Moloch's forces opened fire immediately, energy beams lashing out across the void. "Evasive maneuvers," Foster barked. The Odyssey lurched, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. "Shields at 80%, the tactical officer reported. "We can't take much more of this." Foster's mind raced. "Dr. Singh, are the teleporters ready?" "Yes, but we'll only have one shot at this," Singh's voice crackled over the comm. "Understood. Reeves, you're up." In the transporter room, Reeves and his team materialized on the pads, weapons at the ready. "Energize," he commanded. The world dissolved around them, reforming into the chaos of the factory station's interior. Alarms blared as Moloch's loyalists opened fire. Reeves dove for cover, his team scattering. "Push forward," he shouted over the din. They advanced methodically, taking down enemies with practiced precision. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out. "Traitors, you would doom our entire race to human subjugation." Archon Moloch stood at the far end of the corridor, flanked by guards. His eyes blazed with fanatical intensity. "It's over, Moloch," Reeves called out. "Stand down." The Archon's response was a snarl and a raised weapon. Reeves reacted instinctively, his own rifle coming up. 2 shots rang out in quick succession. Moloch crumpled, a look of disbelief etched on his face. But even as he fell, his hand slammed down on a nearby console. Warning klaxons erupted throughout the station. A Lurian technician who had defected to their side rushed to a terminal, his fingers flying across the controls. "He's activated some kind of overload sequence." Back on the Odyssey, alarms blared. "Captain," Dr. Singh's voice was tight with urgency. "The energy readings from that station are off the charts. If it goes critical, it won't just destroy itself. It'll destabilize the entire system's sun." Foster's blood ran cold. "Can we stop it?" "Not from here," Singh replied. "But if we could get close enough, we might be able to use our teleporter to remove the unstable elements. It's risky, but—" "Do it," Foster commanded. "Helm, take us in. Reeves, secure that station control room. We're coming aboard." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The Odyssey maneuvered perilously close to the station, while Reeves and his team fought their way to the main control center. "We're in position," Foster reported, "but our computer core can't handle the calculations for a transport of this magnitude." Lieutenant Commander Ivanova stepped forward, her expression determined. "Sir, I may have a solution, but I need your trust." Foster nodded, and Ivanova turned to her console. "Keela," she said softly, "I know you can hear me. We need your help." There was a moment of tense silence, then a familiar Lurian face appeared on the screen. Keila, Ivanova's friend? More than friend? There was no time to ponder the nature of their relationship. "You were right," Keila said, her voice heavy with emotion. "Moloch's madness would have doomed us all. What do you need?" "Your nanotechnology," Ivanova replied. "If we integrate it with our systems, we can boost your computing power exponentially," Keila finished. "I'm on my way." What followed was a frenzy of activity. Keila and her team arrived, their advanced Lurian tech meshing seamlessly with the Odyssey's systems. Dr. Singh coordinated the massive teleportation effort, her face bathed in the glow of holographic displays. "Initiating transport, now!" The ship shuddered as massive amounts of energy coursed through its systems. On the monitor, sections of the factory station began to shimmer and fade. "It's working," Singh exclaimed. "The super weapons are being teleported to a safe location." Foster allowed himself a moment of hope, but it was short-lived. "Captain," the tactical officer shouted, "the station, it's breaking apart." "Reeves, get your team out of there," Foster commanded. "Helm, prepare for emergency departure." The Odyssey's transporter worked overtime, beaming aboard Reeves and the surviving members of his strike team, just as the factory station began to tear itself apart in a series of spectacular explosions. "All hands, brace for impact," Foster shouted as the shockwave hit. The ship bucked and rolled, but held together. As the turbulence subsided, Foster surveyed his bridge. "Status report." "We made it, sir," his first officer replied, a note of disbelief in her voice. "The superweapons have been safely teleported to an uninhabited moon, and the sun, it's stable." Foster nodded, allowing himself a small sigh of relief. "Well done, everyone, but our work is far from finished. Set a course back to Lurian space. We need to assess the damage and begin repairs. We need to regroup with the rest of the fleet." As the Odyssey limped back to Lurian space, Foster couldn't shake the feeling that this victory had come at a steep cost. The ship's corridors buzzed with activity as repair crews worked tirelessly to patch hull breaches and stabilize systems. In the days that followed, Foster found himself thrust into a whirlwind of meetings and strategy sessions. He stood alongside Captain Zara in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Lurian capital, addressing a sea of human and Lurian faces. "The threat of Archon Moloch has been neutralized," Foster announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "But our work is far from finished. We must now focus on strengthening the bonds between our peoples." Zara stepped forward, her four eyes scanning the crowd. "To that end, we propose a full integration of our military and scientific resources. Only together can we ensure lasting stability in this region of space." The assembly hall erupted in a mix of cheers and murmurs of concern. Foster noted the pockets of resistance, the faces etched with skepticism. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he was committed to seeing it through. Weeks turned into months as Foster and Zara worked tirelessly to merge their forces. The Odyssey became a symbol of this new alliance, its crew a mix of humans and Lurians working side by side. It was during a routine sensor calibration that Lieutenant Chen first noticed the anomaly. "Captain," she called out, her brow furrowed in concentration, "I'm picking up some strange readings from Deep Space Probe Theta 9. Foster moved to her station, studying the readout. "What am I looking at, Lieutenant?" "The probe's gone dark, sir, but just before it did, it registered an energy spike unlike anything I've seen before." Foster frowned. "Could be a malfunction. Keep an eye on it and let me know if any other probes exhibit similar behavior." But it wasn't an isolated incident. Over the next few days, reports of probe failures and bizarre energy signatures flooded in from across the Alliance network. Foster found himself in yet another emergency meeting, this time with High Admiral Krax, a grizzled Lurian veteran with a reputation for caution. Krax's tentacles twitched as he spoke, a sign of agitation. These anomalies, they're not natural phenomena. My analysis suggests we could be dealing with vanguard forces from an ancient civilization. Ancient? Foster questioned. How ancient are we talking? Old enough to be considered extinct, Krax replied grimly. Until now. Foster's mind raced with the implications. He turned to Dr. Singh, who had been poring over the sensor data. Doctor, what can you tell us about these energy signatures? Singh shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. They're unlike anything in our database, Captain. We need more information. Foster nodded, a plan already forming. Then we'll get it. I propose we use the Odyssey's enhanced teleporter systems for a series of recon jumps into uncharted space. We can gather data without risking a full-scale expedition. Krax's eyes narrowed. It's risky, Foster. If these are indeed vanguard forces, you could be jumping right into their clutches. It's a risk we have to take, Foster countered. We need answers, and we need them now. The next few days were a blur of activity as the Odyssey prepared for its high-stakes mission. Foster stood on the bridge, tension coiling in his gut as they prepared for their first jump. All systems go, Captain, Reeves reported from Tactical. Teleporter is charged and ready. Foster took a deep breath. Initiate jump sequence. The familiar shimmer of the teleporter enveloped the ship, and suddenly they were somewhere else entirely. The view screen filled with the swirling gases of an unknown nebula. Sensors, full sweep, Foster ordered. Let's see what we can find. As they jumped from system to system, a chilling picture began to emerge. Massive construction projects loomed in the shadows of gas giants. Powerful energy emissions pulsed from uncharted moons. And then they saw them. Gigantic biomechanical ships, unlike anything they had ever encountered. My God, Foster breathed, staring at the alien vessels on the console. How many are there? Dr. Singh's voice was tight with urgency. Captain, based on the scope of these projects and the size of these ships, this could be the vanguard of a much larger fleet. We could be looking at millions of travelers. Foster's blood ran cold. He opened a channel to Lurian High Command. This is Captain Foster. We need to convene a war council immediately. We have a situation. The council chamber crackled with tension as Foster presented their findings. High Admiral Krax slammed his tentacle on the table. We must strike now, he bellowed. Drive these invaders out before they can establish a foothold in our territory. Captain Zara rose to her feet, her voice calm but firm. And risk provoking a war with a civilization we know nothing about? No. We should fortify our borders, study these beings. There may yet be a path to peaceful contact. The debate raged on, neither side willing to concede. Foster was about to interject when alarms blared throughout the chamber. A junior officer burst through the doors, his face pale. Sirs, long-range sensors have detected a massive anomaly at the edge of our space. It's a wormhole, and something's coming through. Foster raced to the command center, his heart pounding. On the main view screen, he watched in awe as a colossal alien vessel emerged from the swirling vortex of the artificially generated wormhole. Status of the fleet? Foster barked. Scattered, sir, came the reply. It will take hours to mobilize a response force. Foster's expression resolute. He knew what had to be done. Prep the Odyssey for immediate departure. We're making a jump. Captain, Zara protested, you can't be serious. Against a ship that size. We don't have a choice, Foster cut her off. If we don't act now, we lose any chance of controlling this encounter. Minutes later, Foster stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, his crew a mix of determined humans and Lurians. All hands, prepare for jump. We're about to make first contact. The ship shimmered and vanished, reappearing directly in the path of the massive alien vessel. Foster stared up at the view screen, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. This is Captain Jonathan Foster of the Starship Odyssey, representing the Human-Lurian Alliance. We come in peace, seeking dialogue. For a moment, silence reigned. Then a beam of energy lanced out from the alien ship, enveloping the Odyssey in a shimmering field. Foster tensed, ready for anything. A voice unlike any he had ever heard filled the bridge. "We have much to discuss, Captain Foster of the Human-Lurian Alliance. Prepare to be brought aboard." As the Odyssey was drawn inexorably towards the massive alien vessel, Foster exchanged glances with his crew. Whatever came next would shape the future of not just two, but potentially three civilizations. The first steps of that journey were about to begin. As the Odyssey was drawn inexorably towards the massive alien vessel, Foster exchanged glances with his crew. Whatever came next would shape the future of not just two, but potentially three civilizations. The first steps of that journey were about to begin. The moment they materialized inside the colossal ship, intricate beams of light enveloped the Odyssey. Dr. Singh's console erupted with data streams. "Captain, these are multiphasic sensors," she reported, her fingers flying across the interface. "Their capabilities are extraordinary." Before Foster could respond, the bridge erupted in a cacophony of alien frequencies. Holographic forms flickered into existence, their shapes shifting and morphing in a dizzying display. "I've established a rudimentary translation matrix," Singh called out. "It's crude, but it should allow basic communication." The amorphous holograms coalesced into vaguely humanoid shapes. A disembodied voice, layered and multitonal, filled the bridge. "We are exploratory drones of the Central Governance Armada. Our civilization spans galaxies, universes. We come to reseed and cultivate." Foster stepped forward, his voice steady. "I am Captain Jonathan Foster of the Human-Lurian Alliance. We welcome peaceful—" "Your welcome is irrelevant," the drones interrupted. "We will harvest suitable resources from your developing civilization. It is necessary to facilitate our population transfers." The bridge fell silent. Foster's mind raced, weighing options. Before he could speak, Admiral Crax's voice boomed over the comm. "You will divert your course immediately. This sector is under Alliance protection." The alien drones remained unmoved. "Your protection is meaningless. Our mandate is clear." Foster watched as Crax and Zara's faces appeared on separate screens, their argument escalating. He tuned them out, focusing on the alien vessel surrounding them. An idea formed, dangerous and bold. "Lieutenant Chen," he said quietly, "can you isolate key structural nodes on this ship?" Chen nodded, her fingers dancing across her console. "Targeting systems online, sir." Foster raised his voice. "Attention, Central Governance drones. We possess technology capable of instant matter displacement. Allow me to demonstrate." He nodded to Chen. In a flash, dozens of small marker devices appeared throughout the alien vessel's systems. "Those were harmless," Foster explained, "but they could just as easily have been high-yield explosives. Stand down and negotiate, or we'll be forced to defend ourselves." For a moment, the holographic drones flickered, their forms destabilizing. When they reformed, their tone had changed. "This PID's ability is unexpected. Our protocols do not account for such technology in developing civilizations. We must consult higher command structures." Foster allowed himself a small breath of relief. "We're open to discussion. Perhaps we can find a way to coexist peacefully." The drones conferred in rapid, untranslatable bursts. Finally, they turned back to Foster. "A temporary cessation of hostilities is acceptable. We will await the arrival of Decision Matrix Command drones. You may prepare a delegation to present your case for coexistence." As the holograms faded, Foster turned to his crew. "Contact Earth and the Lurian homeworld. We need representatives here immediately. Dr. Singh, I want you to gather every scrap of data on their technology. Reeves, assess their defensive capabilities." He stared out at the vast alien ship, its corridors stretching beyond sight. "We have one chance to convince them. Let's make it count." The Odyssey shimmered into existence within the cavernous bay of the alien vessel. Foster's stomach lurched as artificial gravity took hold, the deck plates vibrating beneath his feet. He surveyed his team, a mix of human and Lurian faces etched with commitment and fear. "Remember," he said, voice low, "we're here to negotiate, but stay alert." Towering biomechanical drones approached, their bodies a fusion of sleek metal and pulsing organic matter. Foster suppressed a shudder as one extended a tendril-like appendage, gesturing for them to follow. The Alliance delegation moved through corridors that defied comprehension, twisting in impossible geometries. Dr. Singh's tricorder whirred constantly, struggling to process the flood of data. "Captain," she whispered, "the technology here, it's beyond anything we've ever encountered." Before Foster could respond, they emerged into a chamber so vast it seemed to stretch into infinity. At its center, a hologram flickered to life, a being of pure energy, its form shifting and pulsing with unknowable complexity. "I am Primatus," the entity's voice resonated, not through sound but directly in their minds. "You stand before the apex of galactic civilization." Foster stepped forward, steeling himself. "I am Captain Jonathan Foster of the Human-Lurian Alliance. We come seeking peaceful—" "Your deceptions are unacceptable," Primatus interrupted, its form flaring with anger. "Yet, your abilities intrigue us, this teleportation technology. Reveal its secrets, and perhaps your civilizations may prove worthy of assimilation." Foster's expression resolute. "With respect, Primatus, we have no intention of surrendering our autonomy or our technology." Zara moved to stand beside him, her Lurian features set in persistence. "The Alliance stands united in this." The chamber grew oppressively silent. Foster could feel the weight of Primatus's alien consciousness bearing down upon them. Suddenly, the hologram flickered violently. Foster turned to see Dr. Singh, her fingers flying across her tricorder's interface. "Now!" she hissed. In an instant, chaos erupted. Reeves and his team materialized, weapons blazing. The drones, caught off guard, scrambled to respond. Foster grabbed Singh's arm, pulling her behind cover as energy blasts scorched the air around them. "Ivanova!" Foster shouted into his communicator. "Status?" "Weapons are being teleported to Reeves' position," came the tense reply. "But we're taking heavy fire from the alien fleet." A deafening explosion rocked the chamber. Through the smoke, Foster saw Krax's flagship tear through the alien vessel's hull, energy cascading from the point of impact. "All teams, pull back," Foster ordered. "Prepare for emergency extraction." They fought their way back through the twisting corridors, Singh coordinating their retreat. Just as they reached the teleportation zone, a final transmission crackled through. "This is Admiral Krax for the Alliance." A blinding flash engulfed them as they dematerialized. When Foster's vision cleared, they were back on the Odyssey's bridge, surrounded by the battered remnants of their fleet. But there was no time for relief. The view screen filled with a sight that chilled Foster to his core, an endless armada of central governance ships pouring through the wormhole, blotting out the stars themselves. Primatus's final message echoed across all channels. "No quarter shall be given to those who defy the path of governance. Utter subjugation for resisting entities is the only solution." Foster gripped the command chair, his mind racing. They had struck a blow against an incomprehensible foe, but at what cost? And how could they possibly hope to stand against such overwhelming force? He turned to his crew, human and Lurian alike, seeing in their eyes the same mix of fear and tenacity he felt himself. "All ships," he ordered, his voice carrying across the fleet. "Set course for Alliance space. We need to warn every world, gather every ally." As the Odyssey's engines thrummed to life, Foster stared out at the oncoming tide of alien ships. They had started this war to preserve their freedom. Now they would have to fight with everything they had to survive it.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.